Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
All right, now, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. I'm your host, Tate, and we got a lot to cover today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Cowboys and the Cowboys-Texans game. We're going to talk a little bit about Ezekiel Elliot. A little bit more about that Vontaze Burfict game situation. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns and Joe Haden as well. But we're going to start off, like we said before, last episode, that the college football season is now in full effect. There's going to be a lot of games. Looking forward to it. Truly excited. The game, I think Thursday today, we have Ohio State that's going to kick off their season. Ohio State is going to be a team to reckon with. I kind of feel like Ohio State's one of those teams that you can just pencil into the playoffs this year. They're that good. And I really don't see anyone really, slowing them down. Maybe late in the year, that Ohio State-Michigan game, you can never count Michigan out, and I think Michigan's going to be a good team. But if you were going to MyBookie.ag and you were going to place a bet, Ohio State would, I'm not recommending, I'm not telling you to bet or anything, but Ohio State would be good money to say they're going to win it all. I think they're that good. So excited to see the college football season kick off, and that means the following week the NFL season is kicking in. So super excited about that. But we're going to start off with the Houston Texans. They canceled their game in Dallas with the Cowboys. And as everyone knows, with the hurricane situation down in Houston, the flooding, and how that city has kind of come together, the Texans just decided, it was in their best interest to get their players back to Houston and get them to their families. And I think this was the way it sounds like. It was a bit of a shock for the Cowboys. They were expecting the game to happen, but then it just came down that the game had been canceled. The way it looks like an opening, a safe route that kind of came about so that they could actually bus the players back to Houston, and the Texans took it. And I agree with them. I think that was a smart decision on their part. These players, they have family, they have kids, property that they have to get to, friends they got to get to. And this is way bigger than any preseason game. There's been too many preseason games as it is, so I applaud the Texans for actually just making the decision that they're just going to go ahead and cancel that game and let their players get to their families. Because a lot of times you can say, even myself, I have friends and family down in the Houston area, and you may hear from family and say, okay, they're okay, but you have a lot of friends down there as well that you want to hear about. You want to make sure You want to see what kind of damage your property has and what you need to do. The Texans would not. I don't believe the Texans would have had their head kind of in the right place for a game like that. And if you're not, when you're playing football, if your head's not in the game, that's how injuries can happen. And you can have much more, serious repercussions going down the line here. So it's the best thing is to take care of the players, take care of the players' family, and get them home to Texas, to Houston, so they can start the rebuilding process. It's a long process of rebuilding, just like with Katrina. And there's been a lot of talk about J.J. Watt and the money that he has raised. It is crazy how much money he has raised. Initially, I believe he was trying to raise $200,000 for flood victims. Now, I think he's up to like $6 million now, and all that money will be needed. I know this isn't an MMA podcast, but one of the things I saw Derek Lewis, nicknamed the Black Beast, and he's using his truck and he's pulling people out and helping people. The city is coming together for the better good of the community, and just very proud of everyone on how they've kind of banded together to help out each other. So now we're gonna change subject. We're gonna stay on the Cowboys a little bit, but we're gonna change the subject to the Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliot, who has been suspended for 6 games, and he's been having his appeal hearing this week. Yesterday he had there was 10 hours of deliberation, and then today is the day that Ezekiel Elliot is actually testifying and giving his side of the story. And they're saying that this is going to take as much as 10 hours again today. So this is a very, very thorough process, in which, the way I understand things, Ezekiel is standing by his stands that, there was no domestic violence whatsoever, and that there's no evidence to show, but there is evidence to show that this lady has tried to extort money. This lady has threatened to ruin Ezekiel Elliott. I don't really know the true answer, but just looking by what the police has said, and what everyone around, there's some talk now that before it was looking like there's no chance that the suspension would be, that they were going to get a reduction in time. And now, listening to ESPN, listening to NFL Network, listen to reading some of the other websites, it's starting to look like maybe Ezekiel will get a reduction in sentence, that it won't and is a suspension. So maybe it'll go down from 6 games to 4 games. But now all of a sudden, where yesterday I was under the belief that there was no way, that nothing was going to change, there was going to be no reduction in suspension, it's starting. There's starting to be a little whispers that maybe a couple games reduction could be in play. Speaking of game reductions and a couple games reduction, there was another suspension that I really just thought should have never happened, and that is Vontaze Burfict's suspension, where he was suspended for 5 games for hitting Kansas City player Anthony Sherman, fullback. And when you look at that hit, it's just, as I said yesterday, that was as legal as a hit as you can get. It was at the line of scrimmage. It was, shoulder to the chest, and he was getting suspended more. I thought he was getting suspended more for what he's done in the past than what that hit really was. And the suspension today came out that the suspension has been reduced from 5 games to 3 games. They didn't give a reason on why the suspension was reduced, but with the appeal, it's been reduced. And there's been players like Ray Lewis and a few other guys that have come out on his side and testified on his behalf. But the suspension was reduced to 3 games. I personally don't think he should get suspended, not 1 game. But when you have a reputation of being a dirty player and doing a lot of what is considered dirty hits, I think it's more of a set an example. Because this particular incident was not a dirty hit. It was as clean as it gets in my eyes. And I think the NFL is just taking it that instead of it being a shoulder to the chest, that it was a shoulder. The shoulder went a little high and went more toward the neck and head. And that's when you look at the video. I don't agree. I think it was totally shouldered and then slid up, but. That one you can deal with. You can say, okay, I can see how they said that and allow a 3 game. The 5 game was just too crazy. I thought it was completely wrong, and I'm glad that they've at least adjusted it a little bit so it doesn't just completely wreck his season by taking it 5 games. So it's just going to be a 3 game suspension, which I think the NFL has made the right decision. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Browns and the Joe Haden situation. Stay tuned, and we'll be back. Ever since I started hosting this podcast, people have come to me for advice. Hey, who are you taking this week in the big game? Are you taking the Patriots or the Steelers? Or Chicago or Detroit? Or who do you have in the big fight? Well, let me tell you this. Before I tell them who I have in the game this week or the fight this weekend, I tell them that it's just as important as where you're betting as who you're betting on. And I always use MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag has been around for years. They got a solid reputation. And the most important thing is they pay you out fast. There's nothing worse than winning a big betting on making the right decision, picking the right team to win, and then you have to jump through all these hoops and hurdles to get paid. You don't have these issues with MyBookie.ag. Their payouts is as fast as within 2 days. And that's what I like best about them is I can place my bet, get my win, and collect my money. They have in-game, live betting, and some of the most rewarding perks in the business. They also have an all-new mobile site that makes wagering on the go a breeze. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit with a 100% bonus. Just use promo code GSMC football to activate this offer. Visit MyBookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. And in the first segment, we kind of talked about the fact that the Cowboys-Texans game was canceled so that the Texans could get back to their family and friends. We talked a little bit about the Ezekiel Elliot situation and how he's testifying today. They're expecting about 10 hours of him testifying and being questioned. We talked about Vontaze Burfict. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Browns, Joe Haden, and him getting picked up by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, it didn't take long for Joe Haden to find a new team. The Cleveland Browns, and I just don't understand. I thought, the Cleveland Browns have been making some interesting decisions. And as a whole, I think they've been making good decisions the last couple years. But this is a situation where it's a head scratcher. You're looking at, with Joe Haden, one of their true, it's their true leader on defense. It's their absolute best, not just on defense, but on offense as well. Their absolute best player is Joe Haden. You look at, since 2010, Joe Haden has the second most passes defended in the NFL. It's from Grimes from Tampa Bay, then it's Joe Haden, and the number. So Grimes has 104, Haden has 101, and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie has 99. That's your top three pass defenders in the NFL. To give you an example, Richard Sherman, who is also one of the top pass defenders, is at number 5. It's at 92. You're looking at Joe Haden since 2010, 101, two-time Pro Bowler. Everyone is trying to get a shutdown corner, a top-flight corner, and the Browns are letting them go for nothing, absolutely nothing. They're actually, and it started because they were trying to get him to get a pay cut. They wanted to have him take a pay cut in a league where everyone is looking for a corner. The Browns are trying to get him to take a pay cut. Where everyone, if you're the Browns and you have a guy like him, you're not asking him to take a pay cut. You're trying to get a contract extension. That's the way I see it. To have experience, to have an experienced top flight corner is a hard thing to come by. And he's only 28. It's not like he's at the end of his career. He's a young corner. So he's young. He's a Pro Bowler. He's one of the top guys in the NFL. And the Browns don't trade him. They release him outright. And it just makes no sense. This is one of those decisions that make you scratch your head. When you look around at the Browns and you say, okay, they just got rid of their two-time Pro Bowler. And then you look at a stat, since 2009 to 2015, they've had right around 10 first-round draft picks. They only have one left. During that same time, Dallas has been working on their offensive line, and they have the best offensive line in the NFL. And the Browns have only one first-round draft pick left. A lot of the guys aren't even in the league anymore. That's the difference between a team that has been at the bottom and a team on its way up, or a perennial playoff contending team. They don't make decisions where over the last 6 or 8 years they have no players left from the first round. That's the same as just giving away players. Or giving away, why even have a first round draft pick if you're just gonna waste them on guys like Johnny Manziel and Brandon Wheaton? The only draft pick that really has worked out for them, and we're not talking about the young guys that were drafted this year and last year. It's too early to tell what's going to happen with them. But the only draft pick since that time that has really worked out for them is Trent Richardson. And when you think about Trent Richardson, you think of him as an absolute bust. The big difference is that he had a couple of good years with Cleveland, and then Cleveland traded him away for more draft picks to the Colts, and then he became a bust. So that's the only one that I don't. When I look at all the first round draft picks that Cleveland have had since 2009, the only one that has ever worked out is actually a bust, and is still a bust, but it wasn't Cleveland's bust. I just don't understand. And then when you look at it and you say, the minute that Joe Haden came available, when you're looking at top flight wide receivers like Dez Bryant and other guys tweeting, trying to get Joe Haden to come to the Cowboys or to go to the Steelers or go to another team, the reason why a top flight wide receiver is tweeting that is because they know how good he is. He can make things happen for them. And so was there any shock? Was there a shock that he got released? The minute he became released, he ended up getting a contract, an offer. He got a number of offers, but he ended up accepting an offer with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers came right out with 3 years, $27 million with $7 million guaranteed. That's how you take care of your Pro Bowl, perennial all-star type cornerback. You get him and you lock him down. And I just don't understand what Cleveland is doing when you have something that everyone wants, and that is a corner. Just makes no sense to me. And now, what does this do for the Pittsburgh Steelers? This really improves Pittsburgh's defense. This really does make them a Super Bowl contender. You have that corner. The defenses may not be as good as been in the past, but you have that offense that is just rock solid, and now you just added one of the top corners in the NFL. That's going to really help out the Steelers. I just don't understand what the Browns are doing. They looked like they were making a lot of good decisions, and then this one comes down the pike where they get absolutely nothing for Joe Haden. It just makes me scratch my head. With that, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Once again, this is Andrew Tate, host of GSMC Football Podcast. And to all, have a good night, and we will talk again tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.